The first thing you notice is the vibration. Not the knock itself, that comes a second later, loud enough to make your dog bolt off the couch. But the vibration of the floor under your feet. Because whoever is on the other side of that door is not tapping. They are hitting it with the flat of their palm. Hard. You glance at the clock on the microwave. 11:47 p.m. Through the living room window, you see it. Red and blue light strobing across your neighbor's house, then your lawn, then the curtains you forgot to pull shut. Two silhouettes stand outside your front door. One has a hand resting on something on their belt. Police department, open the door. The voice is calm, but not friendly. It's the kind of calm that comes from someone who has said those same words 1,000 times and expects immediate compliance. Your heart is already moving faster than your brain. You're reaching for the doorknob before you've even decided what to say. And right there, in that 3-second gap between knock and answer, 90% of people lose the entire legal battle they never knew they were fighting. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Has a police officer ever shown up at your front door unannounced? Late at night, early morning, middle of the afternoon. Maybe they asked if they could come in for a second. Maybe they wanted to ask a few quick questions about a neighbor's complaint. Maybe they told you they were just checking on things after a 911 hang-up down the street. Maybe you let them inside. Maybe you stood in the doorway, heart pounding, answering question after question, watching them glance past your shoulder into your living room, into your kitchen, down your hallway. If that's happened to you, I want you to do something before you read another sentence. Pause right here and drop a comment below. Just a city name or a state, nothing that identifies you. And tell me what happened at your door. Did they come in? Did you tell them no? Did you regret something you said? I'm going to tell you something uncomfortable. That knock on your door is not the beginning of a conversation. It is a tactical move. And the officers standing outside have already run through 3 or 4 possible scenarios in their heads before their knuckles ever hit the wood. The only question is which scenario you're going to walk into. But I'm not here to scare you for no reason. I'm here because there's a new generation of technology. Some of it already deployed in major cities, some of it being tested in quieter jurisdictions, that changes everything about what police can learn from you without ever crossing your threshold. And most people have no idea it exists. So let's take this slow. Let's start with what happens at your door, because that's where almost everything goes wrong. You open the door. The cold air hits your face. One officer is standing slightly forward, the other hangs back about 6 feet. The forward one smiles. "Hey, sorry to bother you so late. We're looking into something in the area. Mind if we ask you a couple quick questions?" Your brain says, "I have nothing to hide." Your mouth says, "Sure, what's going on?" That's the first mistake. Not because you're guilty of anything, but because you just agreed to a conversation that has no boundaries, no time limit, and no rules except the ones the officers decide to follow. You've also just given them something more valuable than any confession. You've shown them how you respond to authority. The officer doesn't ask the question you're expecting. They don't say, "Did you see anything suspicious?" Instead, they lean slightly to the left, just a few inches, and look past your shoulder into your home. It happens so fast you almost miss it. "Nice place. You live here alone?" Now we're in dangerous territory, because that question has nothing to do with why they supposedly knocked. They're not asking about occupancy because they're curious about your decorating choices. They're asking because they want to know if anyone else is inside who might observe what happens next, record what happens next, or later contradict what the officers say happened. This is the psychological warfare of the doorstep encounter, and I'm going to teach you exactly how to shut it down. But first, I need you to understand why the door itself is the most legally significant piece of real estate in your entire life. Here's something most people don't know. Under the Fourth Amendment, your front door marks one of the sharpest legal lines in American jurisprudence. On your side of that threshold, you have what courts call the sanctity of the home. On the other side, you have public space where your expectation of privacy drops dramatically. But here's the catch that police rely on every single day. You can voluntarily erase that line. You can invite them across it with a single word, and they know that. Which brings me to the new technology I promised to explain. Because for the last 100 years, if police wanted to know what was happening inside a home, they needed either a warrant, exigent circumstances, or your consent. Those were the only doors. But technology has quietly built a fourth door, and most people don't even know it exists. I'm talking about radar-based through-wall detection. Thermal imaging that's gotten so advanced, it can allegedly detect heat signatures of multiple people inside a home and track their movement. Acoustic sensors that can be aimed at a home from a public sidewalk and pick up vibrations on glass windows, converting those vibrations into intelligible speech. Drone-mounted infrared that can see heat blooms through walls under the right conditions. And perhaps most disturbingly, what some agencies call digital dust, the combination of Wi-Fi sniffing, Bluetooth scanning, and cellular intercept devices that can tell police exactly how many active devices are inside a home, what networks they're pinging, and sometimes even where in the house those devices are located. Let me give you a real scenario so you understand how this plays out on the ground. It's 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. You're home with your teenager who's supposedly doing online school in their bedroom. You hear a knock. 2 officers. They say there's been a report of a possible domestic disturbance at your address. You're confused because nothing happened. You tell them that. The officer nods, says they understand, but says they just need to take a quick look to make sure everyone's safe. You're an honest person. You have nothing to hide. You step aside and let them in. But here's what you didn't know. 30 minutes before they knocked, a surveillance aircraft equipped with a wide area motion sensor passed over your neighborhood. It didn't look inside your house, not exactly, but it detected multiple moving heat sources inside your home that were inconsistent with a single person living alone. The system flagged your address. Dispatch sent officers to check welfare as a pretext. The officers already had a reasonable suspicion, generated entirely by a sensor you never knew existed, that more people were inside than what public records showed. Their question about a domestic disturbance wasn't based on a 911 call. It was based on an algorithm's best guess about how many bodies were moving through your rooms. And you just let them in. I'm not saying this to make you paranoid. I'm saying it because police departments across the country are quietly acquiring these capabilities, often with grant money, often without public hearings, often without updating their use of force policies to address what these tools can actually do. The Supreme Court has weighed in on some of this technology. Thermal imaging got a major ruling in Kylo versus United States back in 2001, where the court said police generally can't use thermal imagers to scan a home without a warrant. But that was 24 years ago. The technology has changed completely, and the lower courts have been playing catch-up ever since, with some rulings allowing certain types of through-wall sensing and others rejecting it. The result is a legal gray zone, wide enough to drive a SWAT vehicle through, and police are driving through it every day. So what do you actually do? How do you protect yourself without being rude, without escalating the situation, without looking like you're hiding something? Let me walk you through a better version of that first knock. You hear the pounding, you see the lights, you take a breath, and I mean that literally. You force yourself to inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Then you walk to the door, but you do not open it all the way. You open it about 6 inches. You put 1 foot against the bottom of the door on the inside so it can't be pushed wider. You keep the chain on if you have one, and then you speak first. How can I help you? Not what's wrong. Not can I help you with something? Not what's going on. Those all invite expansion. How can I help you puts the burden on them to explain specifically why they are at your home at this hour. The officer will almost never give you a straight answer on the first try. They'll say something like, "We're checking on a situation in the area," or "We had a report that concerns this address." These are non-answers. Do not treat them as answers. You are allowed to ask clarifying questions without being combative. What situation? What kind of report? From who? Watch what happens to their body language when you don't immediately comply. The friendly officer's smile might tighten. The silent officer in back might take a half step forward. This is a pressure test. They are seeing if you will fold. Most people fold. You don't have to. Here's the sentence that changes everything, and I want you to memorize it exactly. I understand you're doing your job, but I don't consent to any searches, and I won't be answering questions without my attorney present. Say it calmly. Say it without anger. Say it like you're stating the time of day. And then, this is the hardest part, stop talking. Do not explain why. Do not justify yourself. Do not say, I'm not hiding anything, but... That but erases everything before it. Just stop. The officer will try to fill the silence. They'll say things like, whoa, we're not searching anything, we just want to talk. Or, you're acting pretty defensive for someone who hasn't done anything wrong. These are psychological probes. They're designed to make you feel unreasonable, paranoid, or guilty. Do not take the bait. You can repeat yourself. I understand. I'm not consenting to any searches, and I'm not answering questions. If they persist, you can add one more sentence. If you have a warrant, you can slip it under the door. Otherwise, I'm going to close the door now. Have a good night. And then you close the door. Not slam it, close it, lock it. Walk away from the window. Do not watch them through the blinds. Do not try to overhear what they're saying. You have done exactly what the Constitution allows you to do, and nothing more. Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, but I'm an innocent person. I don't want to be difficult. I want to help. I understand that impulse. It's a good impulse. But here's what I need you to understand about police encounters at your home. Helping and cooperating are not the same thing. Helping means providing truthful information when you are legally required to do so, or when doing so will not harm your legal interests. Cooperating means surrendering your rights preemptively because you're uncomfortable saying no. There is a massive difference, and police are trained to blur that difference. Let me give you another real-world scenario that happens thousands of times every week across the country. Officer shows up at your door. They say they're looking for your adult son who lives in the basement apartment. They're not here for you. They just want to know if he's home. You say yes, he's in the basement. The officer asks if you can go get him. You say sure, you'll knock on his door. Officer says, actually, why don't we come in and wait? Just by the front door. We won't go anywhere else. You hesitate. The officer adds, we just want to talk to him. If he's not doing anything wrong, this will take 2 minutes. So you let them in. They stand in your entryway. Your son comes up from the basement, sees the officers, and his face goes white. The officers ask if they can step into the living room to talk privately. You say, okay. They walk past you, past the stairs, into your living room. One of them sits on your couch. The other stands by the window, looking out. No, looking around, scanning, noticing the items on your coffee table, the mail on the counter, the open laptop on the kitchen island. You have just given them something they could never have gotten on their own, plain view. Once an officer is lawfully inside your home, any evidence of a crime that is immediately apparent in their plain view is admissible. They don't need a warrant for it. They didn't even need to be looking for it. It just had to be there, in their line of sight. While they were standing somewhere, they had a legal right to be. And that's the trap, because once they're inside, they will find reasons to stay inside. They will ask to use your bathroom, which requires walking past your bedroom. They'll ask for a glass of water, which means walking through your kitchen. They'll say they smell something unusual, which creates probable cause for a more thorough search. Every seemingly innocent request is a lever to expand their presence in your home. I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. Many officers I've spoken with over the years, off the record in professional settings, will admit that the consent search is their most valuable tool. Not because it's sneaky, but because it's completely legal and incredibly effective. They don't need probable cause. They don't need a warrant. They don't even need reasonable suspicion. They just need you to say yes. And you would be shocked at how often people say yes. Even when they have drugs sitting on the table. Even when they have stolen property in plain view. Even when they absolutely know, that letting the officer inside will end badly. They say yes anyway, because the officer is polite, because they don't want to seem guilty, because they've been taught their whole lives that cooperation is always the right answer. It is not always the right answer. Here's where the new technology makes this even more dangerous. Let's go back to that radar and thermal imaging I mentioned earlier. In some jurisdictions, police are now using what's called standoff detection before they even knock. A van drives down your street equipped with a passive radar system that can detect motion through walls. Not images, not faces, but blobs of movement. The system can tell how many people are inside, roughly where they are, and whether they're moving quickly or slowly. That information is then fed to the officer at your door in real time through an earpiece. So when you open the door and say, "I'm alone," the officer already knows there are 3 heat signatures moving in your back bedroom. They know you just lied. And that lie, which you told because you were scared or because you didn't want them to know your kids were home alone, is now a crime in some states. False statements to law enforcement. Obstruction. The legal justification for a warrant, for your arrest. Do you see how this changes everything? You don't even know what they know. They have information you can't see, can't sense, can't verify, and they are under no obligation to tell you where that information came from. That's the asymmetry of modern policing. They carry technology that would have been considered science fiction 20 years ago. And you carry, what? A gut feeling that something feels off? So what do? Do you become a legal scholar overnight? Do you memorize every Supreme Court decision on search and seizure? No, that's not realistic. But you can learn 5 simple rules that will protect you in 90% of doorstep encounters. And I'm going to give them to you right now. Rule 1. You do not have to open your door. Not ever. If police knock and you don't want to talk, you can simply not answer. They cannot break your door down without a warrant or exigent circumstances, meaning a true emergency like screaming, gunshots, or visible signs of someone in danger. A quiet house with no response to knocking is not exigent circumstances. They will eventually leave. They might come back, but they will leave. Rule 2. If you do open the door, step outside and close it behind you. This is a tactical masterstroke. By stepping onto your porch and closing the door, you are now in public space where you have fewer privacy rights. But paradoxically, you have also prevented the officer from seeing inside your home. You've also made it significantly harder for them to claim you invited them in. They are now outside with you, on your porch, having a conversation that you can end at any time by simply walking back inside and closing the door. Rule 3. Never answer the question, "Do you mind if I come in?" with anything except a clear, unambiguous no. "I'd rather you didn't" is not a no. "I don't think that's a good idea" is not a no. You need to say, "I do not consent to you entering my home." Those exact words. Write them on a sticky note by your door if you have to. Rule 4. Do not lie. Ever. Lying to a federal officer is a crime. Lying to a state or local officer can be charged as obstruction or false reporting in many jurisdictions. If you don't want to answer a question, you have a constitutional right to remain silent. Use it. Say, "I'm not answering that question." That is not a lie. It is a lawful assertion of your rights. Lying is not. Rule 5. Record everything. The Supreme Court has made clear that citizens have a First Amendment right to record police officers performing their official duties in public spaces. Your front porch is a public space. Your doorway, if you're standing on the threshold, is a gray area. But pull your phone out, hold it at chest level, and say, "I'm recording this for everyone's safety." Most officers will immediately become more professional. Some will tell you to stop. You do not have to stop. But you do have to decide whether that fight is worth having in that moment. Usually it is, because the recording is your best evidence if things go wrong. Now, let me circle back to where we started, the new tech. Because I promised you I'd explain how to stop police from using it, and I haven't fully delivered on that yet. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot stop police from using through-wall sensors, thermal imagers, or acoustic surveillance from public spaces. Not directly. The technology exists, it's being deployed, and by the time you know it's being used on your home, it's already too late to object. But here's what you can do. You can make sure that whatever they detect outside your home never gets turned into evidence against you inside a courtroom. And you do that by never consenting, never waiving your rights, and forcing them to get a warrant for every single piece of information they want to use. Because here's the dirty secret of a lot of this surveillance technology. Courts are still figuring out what to do with it. If police scan your home with a radar device and then use that information to get a warrant, and you later challenge that warrant, a good lawyer can argue that the scan itself was an unconstitutional search. Under Kylo, any technology not in general public use that reveals information about the interior of a home is presumptively a search requiring a warrant. That's a high bar for the government to clear. But if you let them in voluntarily, none of that matters. The consent overrides the Fourth Amendment violation. You handed them the evidence on a silver platter, and no court is going to give it back. So the way you stop police from using this new tech to spy on you is simple, but it's not easy. You refuse to make their job easier. You refuse to fill in the gaps that their technology can't reach. Their radar can tell them how many people are in your house, but it can't tell them what those people are doing. Their thermal imaging can detect heat from a grow light, but it can't tell them what plant is under it. Their acoustic sensors can pick up voices, but they can't tell who is speaking without a human to interpret the sound. Don't be the human who finishes their investigation for them. I want to leave you with one final image. It's late. You're sitting on your couch scrolling your phone when you hear it. The knock, the lights, the voice. Police department, open the door. Your heart jumps, your hands go cold, and then you remember. You have a plan. You know what to say. You know what not to say. You know that your front door is a constitutional boundary, not a social obligation. You take a breath. 4 seconds in. 4 seconds hold. 4 seconds out. You've got this. And before you stand up, I want you to do one more thing. Look around your living room right now, right where you're sitting. Look at your coffee table. Look at your counters. Look at your open laptop, your mail, your phone, anything that might be sitting out. Now ask yourself, if a police officer walked through that door in the next 60 seconds, what would they see? What would they ask about? What innocent thing might look different to someone who doesn't know your life? If that thought makes you uncomfortable, good. That's the point. That discomfort is your brain finally understanding what's at stake behind your own front door. Stay safe, stay smart. And whatever you do, don't answer their questions without me on the phone.